Hey guys, welcome to Unit 9. This unit is on geometry, and we're going to go over some basic geometry points first. First thing in geometry is the point. A point is a location in space, and we would read this as point A. A line, let's zoom in for you. Cut over. A line is straight and it extends forever in both directions. That's why we show an arrow on both sides, because it extends in both directions. We would read this line as line BC. You name a line by any 2 points on that line. This line only has 2 points, point B and point C, and so we would read it as line BC. And we would write capital B and capital C, and we draw a small arrow over the top. Sometimes a line may be indicated by like a cursive letter, like a letter L, in which case we would just write it line L. Next we have the plane. A plane is a flat surface that extends forever in all directions. So it extends in that direction, this one, that one, and even the corners. In every direction it extends forever. Think of it sort of like this index card. That it's just a flat surface and it goes on forever. Any 3 points that are on a plane, like D, E, and F, any 3 points on a plane can be used to name that plane. Sometimes a plane may be designated by a letter like a cursive P. So we could name this plane as plane P or as plane DEF. A segment or a line segment is a part of a line between 2 points. Here we have a segment between the points G and H, and so we would call this line segment GH. And we designate it by the capital letter G and the capital letter H and just a straight line over the top. Notice there's no arrows on it because a line segment doesn't extend forever in space. It only extends between the points G and H. Next we have the ray. Ray is a part of a line that starts at one point, like point K, and extends forever in one direction, in this direction. So this ray we would name by any 2 points on the ray. One of those points must be the point where it originates. So we have the ray KJ, and we would show that by capital K, capital J, and you'll notice the line over the top of the ray has an arrow on one end because it's a ray and it extends forever in just that one direction. So there's our ray. The next basic geometry figure is the angle, which is formed by 2 rays with a common endpoint. So we have ray YX and ray YZ. The common endpoint would be Y. Sometimes the angle can be designated by the angle inside, and we would call this angle 1. Let me write this down. We could call this either angle 1, or we could call this angle X, Y, Z. This common endpoint that the angle has, this point is called the vertex. So the common point that the 2 rays share on an angle is called the vertex. So the vertex for this line, for this angle is Y. That's the vertex point. And when we name our angles like I did a second ago, the vertex is always the middle letter. Now angles are measured in degrees, just like length would be measured in inches. A degree is used to measure the angle of something, and so this would be the measure of the angle. Let me show you closer. This is the measure of the angle, and that's measured in degrees. And the degree symbol you're familiar with, like with degrees Fahrenheit. The degree symbol is just a little elevated circle. So if I had an angle that measured 60 degrees, I would write it just like that. Now sometimes you'll see this, M and then like an angle. We'll use XYZ here. M means measure of the angle. So if you're asked for the measure of the angle, and let's say it's 60 degrees, you would say the measure of the angle is 60 degrees. Now, angles that fit together to form a straight line add up to 180 degrees. Well, maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. A little more on angles here. The measure of angles that fit together to form a straight line, all of those measures add up to 180 degrees. So if I have this figure right here, cool, and I have angle GKF plus angle GKH plus angle HKJ, all of these measures, let's see, this one plus this one plus that one, they will all add up to equal 180 degrees. So for example, if this was, let's say this is 40 degrees, and let's say this is 80 degrees, that would be 120 so far. And I know it's got to add to 180, so 180 minus 120, then this angle has to be 60 degrees. All the angles that make a straight line, that total up to make a straight line, have a total of 180 degrees. Now if I have a figure that has enough angles, let's look at this figure. The measures of the angles that fit together to form a complete circle. So all the angles that fit together to form a complete circle, all of those angles will add up to a total of 360 degrees. Pause it for a second and think about that. Okay? All of these angles that fit together to form a circle, their total will be 360 degrees. Let's talk about the different kind of angles. We have the right angle, which always measures 90 degrees. It's designated by that little square in the corner of the angle, in the vertice of the angle. An acute angle is any angle that's greater than 0 degrees, greater than 0, but less than 90. So any angle that would be measured within this area right here would be an acute angle. An obtuse angle is an angle that's greater than 90 degrees and less than 180 degrees. So let's just draw in a dotted line for 180 degrees, and let's draw in a little dashed line for 90 degrees. An obtuse angle would be anything in this area right here. Greater than 90, but less than 180. Now's a good time to stop and in the edge of the column of your paper, write any questions that you have to ask me tomorrow. In geometry, you'll hear the word congruent a lot. Angles can be congruent, line segments can be congruent. Well, congruent means that you have the same size and shape. So these two angles have the same size and the same shape, so they are congruent. These two line segments have the same size and same shape, so they are congruent. When you see this symbol, let me write it a little bit bigger. An equal sign, well, that's not very good. An equal sign with a little squiggle over it, okay? That's the symbol that means congruent, is congruent to. So if this angle was called angle 1, and this angle was called angle 2, angle 1 and angle 2, we would say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And we would write it like this. And we would say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Whoa. Okay? Yep, that's right. There's more about angles. So the next category is complementary angles. And complementary angles are two angles, gotta have two, whose measures add up to equal 90 degrees. In this figure, I have two angles. Angle ADB has a measure of 40 degrees. Angle BDC has a measure of 50 degrees. And they add up to a total of 90 degrees, making this angle and that angle complementary angles. We also have something called supplementary angles, and those are the angles whose measures add up to equal 180 degrees. So I have this figure. Oh look, a guest star, a little fly. We have a figure, we have 30 degrees with this angle, 90 degrees, and 60 degrees. If I add all of those up, 30 plus 90 plus 60, I'll get 180 degrees. So we can say that all of these angles are supplementary angles. Okay, you'll be happy to hear this is the last thing I have. We have vertical angles. Vertical angles are made when we have two lines, and like let's say this is a line and this is a line, and the two lines intersect and they form a pair of vertical angles. The reason we're telling you about the vertical angles is they create something very special. They create vertical angle pairs. And vertical angle pairs are congruent. So, angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. Vertical angle 1 and angle 3 are said to be congruent to one another. Remember, they have the same size and they have the same shape. So the other pair of vertical angles are angle 2 and angle 4. They are also congruent. They are congruent to each other. So let's grab a pen here, make sure I tell you this right. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Notice that they are the opposite angles. When you have two lines that intersect, the opposite angles that result are congruent. Now angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. Angle 2 and angle 4 were formed by the two intersecting lines, and they're the opposite pairs. This might be a good time to jot down a question you might have to ask me tomorrow. Okay, for tomorrow's quiz, be prepared to tell me, what can you tell me tomorrow? Let me think. I know what I want you to do for tomorrow's quiz. Tomorrow's quiz, I'm going to have you sketch out a right angle, an acute angle, and an obtuse angle. So I want you to sketch those out for me and be able to tell me which one is which. Obtuse, between greater than 90 and less than 180 degrees. An acute angle is greater than 0 degrees but less than 90 degrees. And the right angle, which is exactly 90 degrees. I want you to be able to sketch those for tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.